Speaking of scholarships, the IADPA bookstores has awarded a student from the Eucharist Luis Primary School a 5-year scholarship to the St. Lucia SD Academy. This event this weekend was initiated by Julian Laurent. Let's give him a round of applause. He called me and told me, Gilbert, let's not wait till they die. Let's eulogize them while they are alive. And at this time, we'll call on Mr. Ben Emmanuel and Dr. David Williams to help us present the tokens. We'll start with Remus Brice. Remus Brice is responsible. Since I'm the chairman of the committee, I decided to say something personal as we hand out the trophies. Remus Brice is responsible for my career. When he came to teach at the academy, he reintroduced accounting to the curriculum. I remember that he sacrificed his entire summer break so that he could teach us, and I'm grateful that he did, because it was in his classroom that my love for accounting began. What I found more amazing is that when I could not afford to pay my GCE exam in Form 4, Mr. Brice gave me the $40 that I needed so I could write them. Remus Brice also helped many of us to develop leadership skills. When he established a junior credit union at the school, and I feel incredibly honored when he appointed me the treasurer. Who knows how my life would have turned were it not for you. Thank you. Could you read the plaque?
Oh, all right. I'll read the plaque. Remus Brice, in recognition of your service as a teacher of the St. Lucia SD Academy, you impacted, influenced, and inspired students to excel. 2019.
He could stay there. He needs to do a response. He needs to stay. No, when we finish. Pastor Wulstan Charles. Pastor Wulstan Charles had us do a lot of reading. I remember having to read A House for Mr. Biswas, Romeo and Juliet and Henry IV, and my favorite, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Pastor Charles also taught us to write. In Form 4, he had us to write a poem with the last line repeating at the end of each stanza. To this day, I remember what I wrote. It went this way. Are poets men? Are they different from me? Where have they been that the senses are so keen? Poets are just wonderful. They could write about life or a miserable wife and keep to their route without any words out. Poets are just wonderful. Do the poets die? Do they say goodbye? Do they rot? I hope they do not, for poets are just wonderful. Back then, I didn't appreciate what he was doing. I thought he only gave the girls A's. But this evening, Dr. Williams clarified. But today, because of him, I could appreciate literature, and I've developed a love for alliteration. Pastor Charles did not just impact me as a teacher, but in January of 1980, I got a call while working at the accounting firm PKF. Pastor Charles invited me to leave my job where I got $850 to come and work at the academy for $480. He employed me as a business manager and a math and accounts teacher. This career move gave me the experience and sparked my interest in working with the church. Who knows how my life would have turned out if it weren't for you.
Wulstan Charles, in recognition of your exceptional contribution to Adventist education in St. Lucia, by your example, you encouraged, empowered, and equipped students and staff to give of their best. 2019.
Robert Robbie Innocent. Robert Innocent was my religious knowledge teacher. He taught me that a parable had just one meaning. That in order to understand the context, I must ask, who said it? What did they say? And under what circumstance did they say it? He taught me that God doesn't always work in straight lines, and that he's omnipotent and omniscient. So he could use curved lines and crooked lines. Sometimes he used dotted lines with gaps. And as a result, life is not linear. Robbie taught me about life. He taught me to speak up, not just for me, but for the disenfranchised and the marginalized. He taught me to think critically, to challenge the status quo. A lot of what I learned from him was by example. He taught me to share my lunch by sharing his, even if all he ever had were cheese sandwiches. He taught me that every person and every country has a right to self-determination and autonomy. As I saw him take on Mrs. Robinson, Dr. Robinson's wife was the chairman of the board, and found evidence of him requesting autonomy from the East Caribbean Conference in the 1970s. Robbie is responsible for my worldview and ultimately the person I am today. Who knows how life would have turned out if it were not for you.
Robert Innocent, in recognition of your service as a teacher of the St. Lucia SD Academy, you impacted, influenced, and inspired students to excel. 2019.
Okay, so probably we could organize a quick group picture with Dr. Williams and Cabsec Ben. And just one more picture with the two individuals who were really pushing this, Julian Laurent and Ben and Gilbert Jn-Francois. It's true there were some of us who were members of the team, but we'd like the two pushers to go forward. Yes.
Can I stand by Robert Innocent?
That's right. Great picture. A hand of applause for our team. And now we'll welcome responses from Brother Brice, Brother Charles, and Brother Innocent. Remus, you'd like Robert to go first? Okay.
Yes, please. Oh, when I got the invitation to be here, I sort of was a little dismissive. I said, why do we need to do this? And Julian said that he had spoken to Jean, and we had to do something. I said, well, if this is going to be the eulogy, I'll take it. Okay. But as I reflect on the years of service, this year makes 51 years in education. And I've seen a lot of students. I've seen a lot of attitudes. I've seen a lot of success. And sometimes I reflect on how we got to this point. In 1960, 61, and 62, I remember having to explain to people where Monrepo was. Every time we asked, where you from? Monrepo. And then you had to explain to them that Monrepo was part of some other place, Miku, that they didn't know either. Okay, so we grew up at a time when coming from the country and trying to merge into the city was not an easy thing. Was not an easy thing. And I remember in the early 60s, the concern for my dad, and those of you who know him understand, was how could I get my children a Christian education? Both of my parents attended CTC before it was CUC, and that was in the 40s during the war. And that's where they met. We were homeschooled because we grew up in a rural community where we had no choice. And so the first time I went to school was in Standard 4, I think, when my mother had merged her home school into a one-room church school in Monrepo. And the following year, the conversation was, what do we do with these kids? It was a constant conversation in our household. And I remember it. And during that time, Pastor McCalla, who was the presiding pastor, became part of the conversation. And the Council of Churches, for those of you old enough to know, they met once a month. And so within a very short period of time, the idea of starting a school, an independent secondary school, seemed to be taking root. I didn't understand what this was all about. But every Sunday morning, our worship service was always an extended service. Every Sunday morning, John Campton, who was my dad's friend at the time, stopped by the house. And so the conversation continued into what opportunities there were. And so I remember him at some point mentioning to my dad that there was a building at Lance Road for sale. Okay. And so at the next meeting of the elders, they took a decision that they were going to purchase that property. They didn't have any money. And so what John advised them to do was if they had any personal property that they could put up as security. And I don't know how many of you guys here who could wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and tell your wife that you're just going to put up your house as security for a school. But my dad did. And all of those 8 church leaders, as I can remember, we had Brother Williams, Brother Duplessis, Hanson Joseph, at the time Robert French, had all decided to serve as guarantors for the school, and that's how we moved for year 2 from the elementary school to the secondary school in Lance Road. And I remember going to school with Robert. Your dad was part of that conversation as well. And Mervyn was in my class. And the rest of it is history. So for me, none of this is about me. It's about the opportunity that was given to us by people who were willing to make a personal sacrifice. And so I'll take this opportunity. I don't need to tell you about me. We live in an age where one click on the computer, you could find out all you need to know about me, because I'm out there. Okay? But after I listened to David's conversation about the contributions that are possible and the impact of students living in households where there is no guidance, there is no leadership, there is no mentorship, I give away a lot of money every year for education. I am fortunate to be part of a program in Connecticut, and we have the #1 charter school in the state. And it's been for 5 years going. And you could check it out, the Academy of Information Technology and Engineering. It was started by myself and 4 other guys 21 years ago. And I am just trying to figure out how so much of that success can be translated to St. Lucia. And so, to initialize it, I will commit to year 1, $10,000 in scholarship for kids who grow up in single-parent households. And I will make a further commitment of $100,000 over the next 5 years. Guaranteed. Okay. And that's not all. That's not all. I'm going to promise you to find corporate sponsorship that's going to match every dollar that I'm going to contribute. Guys, this is the least I can do. I will be 68 in about 2 weeks. And so I have committed a lot of the last 20 or so years I have spent in the United States, and I have worked, and it's time to do something for home. Okay? And Miss Berthier, I am considering doing a 2-week technology workshop during the summer at your school. Okay. All right. So I hope we can continue this network. Thank you. And I hope we can appreciate the fact that without sacrifice, there can be no outcome. The thing that concerns me, and gentlemen, be a little patient, I ask myself too often times, where would David be had it not been for SDA? Where would Ben be had it not been for SDA? Where would Jn-Francois have been had it not been for SDA? We don't know that. We don't know that. So we got to move forward in faith. And we got to move with a sense of sacrifice, personal sacrifice, so that the young people coming up may have the same opportunity that we have had. Thank you very much. All right.
Congratulations and thanks again. Thank you so much for your commitment. I think Wulstan Charles, Teacher Charles would be second, next in line. Yes.
My dear brothers and sisters, only eternity will reveal the impact of moments like these. Much of what is documented by historians being interpreted sometimes decades after the event found its relevance only on hindsight. But you are here tonight. You are in this moment. Yes, Leslie. And you can make it count. I thank my friend Gilbert Jefferson for not having alerted me any sooner than tonight that I would have had to give some sort of a response. So this affords me the opportunity to find my cue from what obtains here tonight. So it began with this presentation by Professor Dr. Williams. It's an honor to think of you as a personal friend. And of course, these are my colleagues. At CUC, his name was Plato. You don't have to wonder why. And when I saw Remus pull his camera tonight, I remembered photography. That's what gave birth to it. We've had some good photographers coming from the academy. But when I think of it, putting it, crystallizing it, I believe I need to make mention of two individuals. One who I've never met in person. His name is David Lewis. He was known generally as Papi, a term of endearment because he meant so much to everyone. He attended Caribbean Training College in 1927 when it opened. And after graduating, he held a crusade in Sufra in 1932, which resulted in a company being formed, a Branch Sabbath school. He, of course, had been baptized. He was among 10 individuals baptized in the Dibrel area. But in 1934, he was the first principal of the first Seventh-day Adventist school on the island. And his assistant, who was also trained at Caribbean Training College, wrote a calendar. These people, by their sacrifice, for example, when the Dibrel Church took the decision to open that school, the decision was to operate using the church building as school. David insisted, let's build a school. So they added a piece, 15 by 20. That was the school. They started with about 50 students coming from all around. People who wanted a different quality of education. And this school gave impetus to the growth of the church, so that Adventism began to spread from that beginning in Dibrel through to Monrepo, Denry, then back to Mico Deriso. The hub was Dibrel. Of course, Soufrière was roped right in there, in that hub. Until the school started in Castries. And it began to grow from that Castries hub. But when the primary school started in L'Abbaye, it caught fire. The relationship between development, the spread of the gospel, and the work of education. And that's where I will always express publicly my indebtedness to Mr. Francis Mason. If there is one man that I can consider to be the father who was not biological, but who molded me into being someone, that's the man. But now, I'm not young anymore. And I can just borrow a few lines from Alfred Lord Tennyson, from his well-known poem, Ulysses. That which we are one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. I think there is room for one more contribution that I want to offer in the sphere of Seventh-day Adventist Christian education, beginning there. It is something I've been thinking about. Claudius, your words have not been falling on deaf ears. By Claudius, I mean Claudius Francis. I didn't have that in mind a few years ago when I wrote that translation of our national anthem into the Creole. You know it is now official. But here is the point. We are a bilingual country. And I've been putting the program together. I think it is at the place where I can now take it to the next level and work with, if that's according to, if that will fall in place in your curriculum, so that the St. Lucia Seventh-day Adventist Academy can pioneer in Creole literacy. It is not impossible, and it's not going to take anything away from your success. It would add to it, I think. So that by the time students graduate, they can write the language fluently. So leaving this little offer with you, because God didn't bless me with the bankroll that he gave Remus. Let me leave you with some words of comfort. L'autre façade de montagne là, c'est l'on promesse li. C'est yon cité saint qui bon Dieu même bâti. Qu'on nous ka grimper pour arriver tête mon nan. Nous ka ouais boisan qu'on nous ka résident. Dans le livre ces prophètes là, nous ça lit encore concerné en place qui toute la oui alors. Et mi place là, mi là, droit devant nous. Belle maçonnerie ek maison ka kouye non. Yo qui kay en cité kay pour un grand plaisir en chaîne commandement avec la foi Jésus. Là nous tout kay chanter, nous kay célébrer, nous kay louer Dieu pour toute éternité. Bon, frère moi excès moi. C'est pour joindre nous là en place clété ça là qui pani toi ka. Acceptez message mon Dieu avec chaîne fidèle. Les Jésus vive et kay mené en ciel. Nous presque la caille. Nous presque la caille. Gardez bouillantise là à dans distance là. Gardez clété ka bouiller en se baye. Tout à l'heure nous caillons tué pour nous été. Tant c'est ange là qu'a chanté. Nous presque là. Nous presque la caille. I'm not worthy to hand it over to him. You are.
I simply want to ensure you all that we are almost at the end. There is 2 or 3 things I need to mention before we go. The first one is I want to thank Gilbert and his team for putting this together for us. Really appreciate that. And in that thanks, I want also to mention Dr. Williams for taking time to come here to do this for us. Really appreciate it. Now, if you were sharp, you would have noticed that there was a little uncertainty about who goes first and who goes last. You see, I believe that in a party, the best wine should be served first. So, you had the best wine. So, when you drink my little Kool-Aid, it won't feel that bad. Now, I don't know what went through you guys. What was your rationale for thinking that you could honor me? It could not have been the words of Jesus to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar and unto God things of God. Because I'm not Caesar, and you know I'm not God. Then perhaps you found your rationale in the words of Paul when he said, give honor to whom honor is due. But I'm not due for any honor. But thank you anyway. I'm really pleased that you think that I should be honored. What really applies to me is what Jesus said to his disciples. After you have done everything that I have commanded you to do, say, I am an unworthy servant. I have only done what I had to do. And that's my story. And thank you for thanking me for doing my duty. It would be amiss of me not to, like the Jamaicans say, big up some of your friends in here. I noticed some of my classmates. I was among the first set of students who entered the academy. I began with the academy. So, as you can see, I look the eldest here. I am in fact the eldest. I have been around a long time. I'm so pleased to see Mervyn Williams there, my classmate. And Ben Drakes, another classmate of mine. I haven't seen any of the girls who were classmates with us here around. No other guy. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate what you've done and said. And believe me, although you try to, you think that perhaps I might die soon, but I have another story for you. I intend to live forever. So, God bless you all. Thanks again for coming.